This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 466 for the week of February 10th, 2019. Well, hello, welcome to Kanzenshuu,
the podcast,
an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site.
Kanzenshuu.
Now explain to me, what is a fan site? We cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. Yeah, what's a website?
It's a thing on the internet that you go to. It's updated here and there.
Come back once a month for the latest news?
Well, come back every so often. It's not like social media where things get commented upon and snarked upon constantly. But we try to keep an archive of the information that's going on, and we have a very large database, as the cool kids call it, with a lot of information in it.
Now, Julian, how do I use Kanzenshuu? I get this question a lot.
Well, you go to www.kanzenshuu.com.
Just type it in. Just go look at things.
And you can click around, or if you're on a mobile device, you can poke around with your finger and see what you find.
It's been a couple of weeks. My name is Mike. I already mentioned that is Julian over there. It's the two of us this week, getting back into the swing of things. So I'm really glad I didn't mention what the previously mentioned topic was, because we got a little bit of sickness going around. Then I actually hurt my back and I didn't want to record for a while. And
Ouch.
Then it's been a couple of weeks. Like, I should start doing this again. So it's you. It's myself. Heath was hoping to be here, and then one of the kiddos started throwing up all over the place.
So, I know that feeling.
So, Julian, you and I, we are going to get back into the swing of things here. It's going to be a super cool and casual episode. We're going to catch up on some listener questions, some that are backlogged from email and tweets, and then we get a whole bunch of new ones, and some of the new ones are probably going to push back the old ones, and I'll forget about the old ones, and it'll remind me a year from now, and we'll catch up on them again. But that's what we're doing, and hopefully that gets us back on track to catch up on all the regular topical things we've been wanting to do. But as I look down the list here, we got some really cool questions, things about just like the series in general, merchandisey stuff, story-related stuff, language-related stuff. It's kind of, the all Kanzenshuu hit parade in terms of questions. So pretty excited for that. I actually want to get things going a little bit, and maybe this is kind of language-related. A lot of people asking questions about, hey, what's going on with the Wiki? We promise we will talk about that at some point soon. We hope to bring some pretty good transparency to what's going on there, do a little bit of a catch up. But Julian, something that you and I worked on based on a podcast episode I did with Jake a while back is the family name guide, which I promised was going to be up last summer, and here we are in February, and it's not online yet. However, I will say it's not online because I'm trying to get it as complete as possible, and I keep discovering new things, and this is a little bit family name guide related, site proper related, and actually wiki related. I've been enjoying doing just like random characters. It's kind of a toss back to how back on Kanzenshuu EX, when I had the plan of, I'm going to do a character guide. That sounds great. That never launched because, of course, one person can't really do that. I started working on a pool because I'm like, he's just around for a little bit. That would be an easy one to knock out. And it turns out Apool's history between the manga and the anime is a little too convoluted for its own good. Can you really tell who's who and different scenes? Like, that was a dumb choice. So yes. I'm kind of doing that again on the wiki, where I'm choosing some characters that are named and don't actually even appear, which I love. That makes it so easy. It's like, all right, this is the one reference to them. Get it documented and you're done. Yes. A couple of the characters.
Get that General Copper article done, right?
Exactly. Oh, that's a good one. I should do that one next. So a couple that I've been doing are from episode, I think it's 41 of Dragon Ball GT. And because we haven't quite hit that far in our eventually returning to Dragon Ball GT review of Awesomeness, I won't say what it's specifically about, but there are some characters that are in name only in that episode. You have Super One, for example, and Julian, there's also a character, Ibichiri. Now, this is kind of like a multi-fold kind of realization about some of these names in here. So, Julian, some of the names that they reference are Kid Katsu, Super One, Ipichiri and Papaya Man. We end up seeing who Papaya Man is, actually.
Right.
I want to go through a couple of these names with you real quick, because I just had fun just writing about them, taking a screenshot if they're there. Then I'm like, wait, I'm learning something about language. Wait, I think I learned something that I've never seen documented anywhere else. Oh my God. And that just gets me excited. So, Super One. This just seems like a very obvious kind of name where he's just a strong, cool dude, right?
Well, maybe. I mean, I don't remember watching that episode of GT, so I don't even remember. Super One. That sounds like maybe a dog in the guise of Superman.
No, there's no character that we see, so who knows? Maybe it is actually a dog, and that's where it comes around. But let's keep going with some of these names here. Let me go with, as it relates to the family name guide, Ipichiri. Now, Julian, what would you think this would be a play on?
I would suppose that it's ebichiri, which is Japanese-style Chinese dish that's shrimp or prawns, if you will, in this savory chili spiced sauce.
Okay, here's the thing. This is always, everywhere that I've seen, written out all as one complete word, single name, Ipichiri. However, in the closed captioning for this episode, there is an interpunct in between Ipichi and Ri, which leads me to think we have a given name and a family name here. Lee may in fact be this character's family name. Had to add that into the guide.
I suppose that's possible, like, Bruce Lee sort of thing, except not.
So then there's another character here, Kid Katsu. This is another one where I go to the closed captioning and I learn new things. Turns out it may not actually be Kid Katsu. It's been written that way in Funimation's English subtitle track. Steve Simmons did Dragon Ball GT. And as we know, for a lot of what he did on this series, it was by ear only. Sometimes there were scripts received, not always. I don't remember when, where he said he originally did get scripts. Not entirely sure on that. So just giving that possibility here. But if you go to the closed captionings, it's not Kiddo Katsu, it's Kito Katsu.
Yes, and in terms of a pun, well, Kitokatsu would mean, like, will surely win. And in fact, that same pun is the reason why there's a semi-tradition of giving out Kit Kats to kids who are taking their high school or college entrance exams. Because it means they will surely succeed. And you also fatten them up on tonkatsu.
There you go. And that definitely fits in with the Super One kind of naming scheme, what I think they're going for there. So this isn't necessarily family name related, but just, I think we got a spelling for a character that I've never seen a spelling for, kind of like from an original source somewhere.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And for the sake of argument, though, like ending in to and do can be confused fairly often in Japanese, especially in older situations. Like the word bed exists as both beddo, which is more common nowadays, and also betto.
Ah, all right. I guess you could say there's an out on this one, but if you had to guess, do you think it would be Kid Katsu or Kito?
It entirely depends on how faithful to the pun they want it to be, and I don't have the people in front of me to pick their brains. So,
well, that's why I'm saying in context of another character being called Super One, I kind of want to go in that direction. So that's the kind
Fair
of
enough.
Absurd kind of like fact-checking research that goes into a character that doesn't even actually appear in the series, is simply named. Just some fun things that have been going on, in terms of people wonder, what the hell do you do, Mike? Well, this is the kind of thing that I do.
Yes.
All right. With that being said, Julian, what we're going to do this episode, like I said, we got a bunch of questions from people, so I just want to kind of plow through them and chew on them as much as we want to chew on them and just have a good time. So that is the plan. I say, let's get on into it. Let's start here, actually, with Simtech. Do we think Toei will ever remaster Dragon Ball Z GT or the movies on Blu-ray? And do we think Gogeta or Bardock will appear in the Broly movie? Asking based on the choice of movies 8, 12, and the Bardock TV special for the theatrical screenings. Whoops, this email's from July.
Yes. So with regard to the second half of the question, I hope you're aware by now that yes.
Think you figured it out.
As for the first half,
Oh, geez.
I'd say that eventually, probably, although after what we've seen with the movies going on with the Blu-ray release, are we sure we want them to is the other question.
Yeah, I guess let's briefly talk about that. So I think we talked a little bit about this on the podcast. At a random point last year, suddenly, all of the original 17, is it, theatrical films showed up on Amazon Prime and Netflix in Japan. Clearly remastered in HD presentation. Did not have, I guess what you'd say, the proper audio that the Dragon Box versions had from back in 2006. And it was like, oh, all right, clearly this exists. What's going to happen there? And then at the very end of the year, they announced, I think it was November, December, January, they put it out in 3 batches. We did, in fact, get all of the movies on Blu-ray. Julian, we had a couple fun little things go on with this Blu-ray release of the movie. First thing was, we're terribly sorry. How could this ever have happened? We accidentally mirrored a tiny little piece of artwork on the back of a slipcover. We would be happy to replace this for you. Heavens forbid.
Right? And then,
we're going to censor the movies.
Yeah, no big deal, right? Wait, what? And they didn't put out like an earnest apology.
No.
Oh, the phrasing that we had on the back cover did not represent the material that's inside correctly. We are sorry. Yeah. No. That's not the problem here. The problem is that the material inside is not representative of what it's supposed to be. Fix that.
Right. So they're censoring middle fingers.
Yeah, that's not something they did before.
No, and it's not something that was done. This is a great point that a lot of people brought up. It's like the version that's on Amazon Prime and Netflix is easily accessible to children, and the version that's on the $40 Blu-ray, that's the one that you're going to censor to make it better for all audiences? What are you talking about?
That's the one that the collectors are going to buy. It's not the one that you're just going to have randomly kids picking up.
And I also want to mention, this isn't the only change that they're doing here. Your friend Kay, noticed very early on that they were kind of doing some extra digital painting to correct some ancient animation errors. So they're doing that, and at the same time, they're doing the middle finger thing. And it also seems like they didn't fix some of the color issues they were having, maybe even made things worse. And I've seen some, I kind of feel like quasi-legitimate conspiracy theories of they messed with some of that stuff to hide some of the painting they're doing with these other aspects here. I don't know, man. It was really disappointing because I bought the first Blu-ray because, of course, I'm going to get TBZ Movie 1. Got that in. It was absolutely beautiful. It looked great. It sounded great. I've never seen Goku's nipples in such glorious presentation on my television screen before. And just as they kept going, it's like, oh. So I feel like they're probably going to move on to doing more aspects of the original series on Blu-ray. We've said this. I don't know if I want what they're offering, though.
Yeah, it's like, what's the point? I mean, come on. Why do this?
I just don't get it, especially the way they phrased it, the non-apology explanation and the backwards logic about it. Very dumb. And you could go, who cares about, just censoring a middle finger, whatever. It looks great, sounds great, just get it out there. Yeah, but this is no longer the perfect archival version of these films. And the fact that we can't move forward with that is really disappointing. And who knows what comes next.
Right? It's no longer the definitive release.
All right, let's kind of jump around a little bit. Instead of a crummy release, let's talk about favorite kind of releases. Zenpai here. What's our personal favorite edition of the manga? Julian, we've had so many editions. Even in the last couple of years, we got another new version of the manga,
right?
In the form of the digest edition. So between the original Tankobon version, the 42-volume release. Then we got the Kanzenban edition from 2002, 2004, condensed down to 34 volumes, bigger size, fantastic quality paper, kind of as we were talking about, like an archival version of the series. A little bit of updates towards the very end there. And that was kind of it for a while, and we thought that was going to be the standard. Guidebooks were starting to use the Kanzenban as the version they referenced, and then it felt like they kind of slipped back on that, and the tankobon version was the original again. And then just the last couple of years, we got this digest version. Julian, the best way to describe it is it's the same size as the original Weekly Jumps, like sort of roughly the same quality paper, maybe slightly better. It's fine. It was limited though.
So yeah, my favorite version is of course the Weekly Shonen Jump release with all of its crappy paper and its substandard printing, and
all 500 plus volumes,
blurbs obscuring the artwork, and yes, you know you have to have the shelf space for all of it. We only have like 100 and I want to say 30-ish issues out of the 516 because there are multiple issues with
double
chapters.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? Because obviously people have heard about the fabled Kanzenshuu archives spread across different areas of the country. Obviously, we want to pick up the original version, but what was your train of thought? Like, what were you prioritizing as you were and continue to go back and pick up the original Weekly Shonen Jump serialization here?
So the things that I prioritize are A, colored chapters, B, Dragon Ball on the cover, C, informational content within the volume that either has something related to Dragon Ball or Akira Toriyama. Yeah. Sometimes there's like little blurbs. I forgot if it was the Tezuka Award or the other one that they did, which was more comedy oriented, but they had a few cartoons done by Toriyama with Kame-sennin explaining the process. And there was also things like movie information, including character profiles, for example, for Z Movie 5 that you can't find anywhere else. We now have that. I got that last time I was in Japan. And the Fusion contest, the introduction in 1995, number 13, and the results in 1995, number 19.
I was going to say, you want to talk more about Wiki. Someone's been writing the entries for Piridin and Gohunks.
Yes, and we, of course, can't leave out the original version of Gohunks, which was done by 15-year-old Kentaro Yabuki, better known now for Black Cat and Toraburu, but he was once a middle schooler doodling Dragon Ball, and he won a prize.
Can I just say that I've never actually heard that spoken out loud, and I'm like, oh, that's the joke, that title. That's like one of those moments when someone finally puts together that Miles Tails per hour is the character's name. That just clicked for me. Trouble. Oh, okay.
Yes. And the protagonist gets himself into all sorts of trouble that would in the real world get him arrested.
Wow.
Many times over.
That's a subject for another day.
Anyway.
So your favorite version of the manga. I mean, you already said like Weekly Shonen Jump serialization, and I feel like you're half serious, but also kind of like mostly serious about it from a historical perspective.
Absolutely. It's sort of history's first rough draft of Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Toriyama even made some adjustments to the series inside in terms of art and more so dialogue in certain chapters.
Yeah.
The tankobon release.
Do you have a couple examples of that? Because I feel like that's the kind of thing that maybe a lot of people don't know. One of the most famous that we have brought up, you did a little thing about this in the 30th anniversary magazine we did. They changed Gohan's age.
Yeah, so in his introduction chapter, he describes himself as 3 years old. And in the very next chapter on the title page, he's 4. So apparently that got nixed very quickly after it was done. But the thinking is, for me at least, that probably they were thinking, oh, it's going to be on TV, and do we really want a kid that young being pummeled?
Yeah, I mean, Funimation did the same thing, just went for another year, even on top of that.
Right. I mean, realistically, he can't be any older than 4 because Goku only met up with Chi-Chi again 5 years before the start of the Z section, but
like, how can we make this work?
It's not physically possible.
Yeah. Another one actually related to the family name guide. You'll see this at some point. Tenshinhan's name was adjusted between the original serialization and even the tankobon. There's at least one instance of 10 space Shinhan.
That's right. So it seems like maybe Toriyama at first was going for like a family name and given name and then changed his mind, but it's not really sure. Another thing that seems to happen that actually carries over into the tankobon is that at first the furigana, the pronunciation next to his name, is written in hiragana, but then like the next volume, it starts being written in katakana instead. I need to go back and pinpoint when that starts in Jump as well.
When it is, yeah.
It's an interesting change, and it's not exactly clear. But the other big one that I remember is that when Gohan and Kuririn reunite on the battlefield just before the Saiyans arrive, they talk to each other like they've never met before, even though they have met already.
Yeah.
And apparently somebody pointed that out to Toriyama, or he remembered, because in the tankobon and all subsequent versions, it's adjusted so that they're talking like they've seen each other before, and Kuririn comments on, "Oh, you've grown up so much."
Those are all great examples. I'm pretty sure all of those actually are cited on the respective manga guide pages on the website. So
I think so.
I'll double check that and give you a link to those specific chapters in the show notes.
But I do want to say, though, in terms of the ones that you can buy, in terms of space considerations, the tankobon is probably the most compact. That or the full color comics, depending on whether you prefer the original artwork of the grayscaled or everything colorized.
It's true. I didn't mention the full color comics, and the difference there that we should probably note: in Japan, they're regular tankobon size as opposed to Viz, who kind of scaled them up.
Right, and those are nice, although they lack the cover page artwork for the most part, and the chapters are renumbered based on the arc.
Yeah.
Which is a weird choice, but that's out there. It's a possibility if you're looking for compactness, and in the case of the full color version, if you want full color. If you want the color pages as Toriyama drew them, there is the Kanzenbon, which is on higher quality, not quite glossy, but nice thick paper stock. It has most of the original chapter title pages, except for a few that we detail in the manga guide.
Mm-hmm.
And those few title pages that didn't make it into the Kanzenbon are present in the Digest Edition. The Digest Edition's gimmick is that it sort of imitates the series as it was printed in Shonen Jump, kind of, sort of. So it recreates the title pages with all the hype text and the fancy blurbs, and mentions the contests that you could enter along with the results, but it like leaves out the names of the winners, I assume for privacy reasons.
I was gonna say, what is the one that Heath kind of like reconstructed and cleaned up?
It was chapter 12, I think.
Yeah,
that's
that early,
where like the entire bottom half is taken up by contest results.
Yeah.
But it's sort of this weird chimera release, because I mean, for one thing, if you're into fonts at all, you'll notice that anything they've had to recreate from scratch uses fonts that weren't in the original release, because they originally used photo typesetting and fonts from the foundry Shaken, but they've never gotten around to digitizing their own catalog. So instead they use near lookalike substitutes by Morisawa, which some of them are more obvious than others. The other thing is that the actual content in terms of the text as well as the artwork is exactly the same as the Kanzenbon version. There were some graphical edits, like fixing mistakes and making things a little more coherent, but also changing the dialogue, like the date of the Cell game. Instead of the 17th of M, whatever that means, they made it May 26th to mirror the Dragon Ball Z TV series. And that carries over to the Digest Edition for whatever reason.
The only weird thing, didn't we see that at the end, it's actually like a hybrid ending between the tankobon and the Kanzenbon ending?
Yeah, it's really weird.
So again, I'm going to say that Julian's favorite is probably the original Jump serialization. If you had to go number 2, what would you go with?
In terms of things that are easily obtainable,
because you said the tankobon is like a nice compact release, but then say that's what you would choose.
Yeah, so I mean, the Kanzenban for the art. It depends on what you want, really. I'd say for the art, the Kanzenban. For the a similar experience to reading it in Jump, the Digest Edition. For compactness, either the full color or the tankobon. So there. That makes it so much easier.
They're all good in their own way. We just buy them all.
That's what we do.
I'm looking at all of them over on my shelf. So, well, not all the jumps. That's mostly Heath's domain. Yeah. I seem to
have
end
the
up
V
with
jumps.
I have the V jumps and the Dr. Slump jumps, which is great.
And the Psycho jumps.
Don't say their name too loud.
You're waiting for the shelf to collapse there?
And Mike's death was recorded on the podcast that evening. All right, let's move on. John here. Podcast episode 42. Yes, a very long time ago. Julian, do you remember where you were like 13 years ago?
Ooh, boy. I guess I was in Japan maybe at the time.
That's probably a fair guess. Anyway, so the ending of that episode has what sounds like an English remix of Zenkai Power. They were curious what that is, and then they have another question here. So we have, oh God, when was the last time I updated it? Kanzenshuu.com/podcast. /endings. We actually have a page in the podcast section that lists what the ending theme is for every episode, except I stopped updating it at episode 397, so it's been a while. But episode 42, so for a while there, I was using English versions produced by a group called Age of Wonder from the Philippines. This was a group that performed new English language versions of Dragon Ball songs for the English language releases of the films down there. Zenkai Power. I love the Age of Wonder version of Kimi ga Hero, You Are the Hero, more than anything else in this living world. I adore the version of that song. Age of Wonder from Songs of a High-Spirited Saga. A lovely, lovely release. It's one of the Dragon Ball kind of like merchandise holy grails out there. Delightful little release. Then they have a question about the end of Dragon Ball GT, which I think I'll just hold on to. I see this come up a lot, but the answer is he was faking it. So if you know what we're talking about, I guess you know what we're talking about there. Why don't we go back to another language thing here? Julian on Twitter, Vanishing Blood asked, Ki versus Chi, which is the more accurate translation? How do you want to break this down? I guess let's actually put this in context. I think one of the reasons that someone would ask this is Viz actually uses Chi and has since 1998.
Yes. So it goes back to the concept of Chi in general, particularly how it relates to ancient Chinese medicine as well as the martial arts. The idea that you have this life force flowing through you. And among other things, it's also the same Chinese character is also used to relate to air, breath, weather, things that seem to relate to that sort of life-giving force, as you might describe it. And in Chinese, particularly Mandarin Chinese, it's pronounced. I'm sorry, I don't have the tones, but qi. It sounds a lot like ch, but it's like. It's like a different part of the tongue that hits the palate. But anyway, that's the sound in Chinese, but the same character in Japanese is pronounced ki with a hard K sound, just like English. And really, they're the same thing. If you take karate, you'd probably know ki. If you take a Chinese martial art, you'd probably learn qi, but they're the same thing. And neither one is more correct than the other. And since Dragon Ball, especially towards the beginning, has a very strong China sort of influence, it would make sense to use Chi in preference to Ki, except later on, not so much. It depends on what you prefer.
I feel like for me, if you're reading it in Japanese, and then especially when you're watching the show in Japanese, hearing the characters in Japanese say aloud Ki, I feel like it's a pretty easy leap just to spell it Ki. But like you said, just with the Chinese roots, and if you're going strictly by the manga, adapting it that way, I can see why Viz went with what they went with, especially at the time, 20 years ago. I kind of see why Viz went with it. Let's see. Roy here says, new fan of the site, loving the animation styles guide and the podcasts. This email is also about a year old. Sorry about that. Favorite collectibles we own. Any interesting story on why Dragon Box 2 was short printed, a limited run there? I guess let's start with the Dragon Box thing. The way that releases typically work is that the first volume tends to sell the most, and so more of it are produced, and then subsequent volumes have a smaller print run. But then you may ask, well, Dragon Box 7 seems like it was easier to get than Dragon Boxes 2 and 4. What happened there? We don't really know. It may be that by the time they got around to doing the end, they're like, oh, we actually could print a few more of these. So maybe it kind of like dipped in the middle and came back up again. It was also a case where they didn't explicitly tell us that the Dragon Boxes were limited. I think the actual first instance of them going on record about that was on an Anime News Network podcast, a ways into them coming out or shortly after they finished. Like, it wasn't early on. So I think a lot of people just went out there and snapped them all up. And there was a period where you could legitimately just keep selling them for $400 a pop and could have put all the Kanzenshuu kids through college if we bought all the Amazon $26 blowout sales when we had a chance. But who knows what happened there. Julian, collectibles, favorite merchandise that you own. Anything come to mind for you?
Let's see. I have a ton of print stuff that's scattered between Japan and here and your and he's houses.
Right.
But a lot of the original Shonen Jump runs of stuff. My holy grail that I still haven't found is the first issue with Dragon Ball 1984, number 51.
Right.
And I'm also looking for the one before that has the preview, which has some artwork of Bulma that hasn't been reprinted ever.
I mean, you can buy it. It just costs $400. It's usually readily available for purchase.
I get outbid on it constantly. The same thing. The same thing with Toriyama's fan club newsletters, Birdland Press. If you see it pop up, you can try, but somebody's gonna spend more money than you, and it's
guaranteed
gonna go for a ridiculously high price. It happened to me very recently. In terms of the stuff I actually have, again, some of the like the full color issues, in particular the first Dr. Slump crossover issue, as well as the Goku dying and going to the afterlife. That one is also in full color all the way through. Mm-hmm. I also have a few other pieces of merchandise, like all 7 of the hardcover Kanzenshuu with Shenlong Times.
Mm-hmm.
I own a very nice figure of Goku. It's from, I think, Mega House's Desktop Real McCoy line.
Oh, yeah.
In general, I'm not a fan of the way that Mega House interprets the ladies of Dragon Ball, but some of their other figures are actually quite nice. I also have a decently large size figure of Toribot that was released for Battle of Gods. I think I got it in like a convenience store gotcha type drawing. What else do I have? Mike, you probably know better than I do.
What you have? Yeah, because it's like the shared ownership resource over here. I mean, I really love, I mean, it's kind of cliche. Oh, Mike loves the old magazines. I do. I love the old V-Jumps, the 94 issues that you recently brought down. I think it's February through May over there that I'm looking at. Those are great. Just the contemporary look at Super Butoden 2, which is such like an integral part of my Dragon Ball, like very personal fandom history and story. I love that. That means a lot to me there, that kind of thing. I mean, Animazement 2013 was an experience like nothing else. Got my Battle of Gods little flyer sheet over there signed by Nozawa, Furukawa, Nakao, Miyaguchi. Fantastic. I mean, that obviously means a lot. I mean, just kind of looking around, it's just the older, kind of like the better for me right now. I think I'm kind of feeling the same way.
I almost forgot. I have the reincarnated as Yamcha manga signed by Toru Furuya. I just got that November last year.
You know, just kind of going along those lines, what I was mentioning about Animazement and also with Furuya right there, it's not just the physical stuff. It's kind of cliche. The One Piece was the friends and the memories we made along the way.
Absolutely.
I think that's kind of what I'm going for here as well. Like Kanzenshuu as an entity is something that means a lot to me, and all the people and the things that it has brought. So
yes, absolutely. Like my meeting Nozawa last year and getting on Japanese TV again, that was fun. My getting on Japanese TV the first time with Hokotate was fun too.
Exactly.
Even though it was only a few seconds. But yeah, I mean, not to cross franchises here, but I feel like the joke at the end of One Piece is that the One Piece will be the relationships that they made along the way and the adventures that they had. And it'll be just a big joke and somebody will be very unhappy. But yeah, I kind of feel that way, yeah.
All right, let's see what else we got here. We got some more language things, but let's break it up. Lum Ramayasha says, what do you think of Broly's box office success, especially in North America? Why do you think it's been more successful than previous Dragon Ball films outside of Japan? How do you think it'll influence the distribution strategy, frequency, and narrative content of future Dragon Ball films? There's a lot to unpack there. I think, why did it succeed well here? I mean, it was coming off of a popular revival series that had got it back in the public consciousness.
Right. And still airing in the U.S.
Exactly. Still airing here. Xenoverse sold millions of copies in terms of Dragon Ball fans. I mean, it's been riding that for a while. Obviously, Fighters coming out doing well, setting the fighting game world on fire. This kind of movie, independent of anything it could have been, was gonna kind of like set the world on fire. The fact that it was a reimagining of Broly on top of that it got a larger kind of theatrical run than the previous films did. I mean, it was too big to fail.
Right. I mean, keep in mind now, Funimation has the backing of Sony.
Right.
So that in general means that they're going to have more power to get the message out there, like the billboards in Times Square.
Yes.
And to also improve their distribution. I mean, it's still a relatively limited release, but still bigger than the last two movies.
But there was also all those great stories about the film critics being like, this what is this that came in as the number 3 movie of the week? What you need to know about Dragon Ball. It's like, we all saw this coming a mile away.
Right. Exactly. And I think just the social media, even compared to a few years ago, the fact that it's almost like Toei and Funimation have been coordinating their media message and releasing the film exactly a month apart rather than, months or a year apart. They were really on message and they were really driving that home constantly. And that was just really getting the public awareness out there.
Terms of the frequency and narrative content of future Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball films, even this is something that Jake talked about when we reviewed the Broly movie itself. It's like, right now, okay, but if this is setting the precedent for this is what they think they have to fall back on moving forward, and kind of like losing sight of the new inspirational spark, that's a little worrying. I honestly don't know where it's going to go. And I kind of, other than our predictions episodes, I don't really like kind of theorizing about where it's going to go, because it could go in any direction. I mean, Julian, we know that they had, 3 different ideas that could possibly have been this film.
Right.
I feel like clearly one of them was going to be Yamoshi, and that may kind of like have morphed into being a fight against a different Saiyan and ended up being Broly. I feel like that's still a story they could tell. We need our closure on Yamoshi in the Mechian Book of Legends.
Exactly. We need to know when that was written and why and where it went.
So who knows where it's going, but I hope we get new. I think they had their fun with the reimagining. Let Heroes, Zamasu's back, sure, all right, let them do that over there. I want new. And that's why I'm relatively excited and interested in this Galactic Patrol prisoner arc. I am biased because I enjoyed Jocko so much, and we threw so much of ourselves into documenting Jocko. I feel like I'm perfectly primed to enjoy any further exploits of the Galactic Patrol, but I want to see where that goes. And so far, it's a little bit different. Great.
And to be perfectly honest, I'd like to see what where it goes from here. I imagine they'll continue to put out movies, several years apart. They may try and tie into whatever's going on TV if something's on TV. But I think more than anything else, they really want the involvement of Toriyama. That's proven to be a winning formula thus far. It was a winning formula with the One Piece movies that Eiichiro Oda was involved in and continues to be involved in. I think the latest one they're coming out with is Stampede?
I'm not nearly caught up enough, so I'm trying to go on blackout as I reread the entirety of the manga. I'm like 120 chapters in right now. So
okay, well you've only got like 7.
I know.
Catch up.
I'm like a tenth of the way, right?
Like 750. Yeah, they're gonna get to 1,000 chapters within the next year or two. Yeah,
easily. All right. I guess maybe kind of related to this, Eddie asks opinions on retcons in the story, not just in the new movie, also favorite filler. I'm of two minds about it. I love how Toriyama says, I write something and I forget about it. I let it escape my mind because I need room for new ideas. Like that is head chala in a nutshell right there. I think that's perfect. At the same time, Bardock, I'm still kind of stuck on that. And what continues to bug me so much about that was him being on record for 2 decades and so consistently on record about it, as recent as the special selection DVD where he commented on it again and drew Bardock there. It's like, all right, well, if you appreciated it so much for what it was, why'd you do something different? But I get where he's coming from. It's like, it's his series. He can do whatever he wants with any of it. So Bardock, I think, really stands out because of the Bardock TV special is such a phenomenal piece of Dragon Ball cinema, even though it's not actually a theatrical film. I think it accomplishes so much. And that's in spite of kind of like everyone who produced it together and the ways that they approach the series and the way that they change things about the series. Somehow that one story just came together in this perfect little package. And it's definitely, you changed the thing I liked, so I have a problem with it. I don't know. What's your overall take on retcons in Dragon Ball, Toriyama related or otherwise?
Well, I think people give the series a lot of credit for being more consistent than it ever has been.
Yeah.
Toriyama was constantly changing things up as he went along, adding on to the series in ways that don't necessarily jive with what's come before, and people just sort of go along with it and not think of it, which I think is a testament in some ways to Toriyama's ability to sort of add on in haphazard ways and make it work.
Yeah.
But even, one of the big things in the artificial humans, besides the fact that Dr. Gero did not exist at all during the Red Ribbon arc.
Right.
He was not a gleam in Toriyama's eye at the time. But Trunks clearly describes the ones that are going to come and attack as 19 and 20. And then when he comes back on the scene, he is surprised to see 19's head as though he didn't know what it was. It's, Toriyama is constantly doing this because he doesn't go back and reread what he's written. And he goes wherever the moment takes him.
Yeah.
And so it's not anything new. With respects to modern retcons in terms of things like the Potara.
I was just going to say that's probably the latest, biggest example. And I think the biggest issue with that is, well, then really there's not much difference. If there's a limited time fusion, who cares between Gogeta versus Vegito?
Right. And, and to be fair, at the time, it's not something that anybody was apparently aware of, except maybe the elder Kaioshin, and that Goku attributes their defusing to the bad air inside Buu, but there's no definitive proof of that. So you can make it work.
Do you want to? But then that we had subsequent decades of, well, this is the accepted truth. That's more of the... I mean, you can change it. There's nothing stopping you from changing it. You're right to change it, but this is what it's been. What are you doing?
I think it's just the sheer amount of time that it's been the common sense, accepted wisdom of the fandom more than anything else. The same thing goes for Beerus being the one that sealed the Elder Kaioshin in the Z Sword.
Right.
Well, if you go back to the manga, his story is kind of self-serving, and he goes out of his way to mention that the guy was definitely weaker than he was. It's like, you wouldn't need to say that unless you were trying to save face.
I suppose, but that just gets more into nothing that any of the Kaioshin say is ever accurate or true or reliable.
Yeah. So again, you can make it work, but really it comes down to the whims of the author, because obviously Beerus was not a gleam in his eye at the time that he was writing the Boo arc.
Right.
So, you can take it as it is. You can accept what you want to accept. There's never been a definitive canon, so to speak, of Dragon Ball. And you can always do what we do, is enjoy a little bit of everything for what it's worth, take it as it is. That will cause extreme amounts of frustration for some people. I know Lance, Mystery Fusion, also known as Gaffer Tape on our forums, dedicates his Dragon Ball dissection to going over all of these story discontinuities and retcons and things extensively. And he loves it, and he's extremely frustrated by it. And, he's in that boat too. So make of it what you will, I guess.
Yeah. Love and frustration going hand in hand here.
And if that doesn't answer anything, then sorry.
All right, let's do some more language things here. Rob Rodent on Twitter tweeted this at us. The recent Toyotaro piece on the official website. So, Julian, Toyotaro drew it every month, usually around the 20th, 21st, kind of in conjunction with V-Jump-ish. He puts up a drawing. They kind of morphed to what it was meant to be over time. Initially, it was described as someone who hasn't appeared in Dragon Ball Super. And it's like, well, the anime and the manga are kind of different now. So number 8 did appear in the TV series, but didn't in the manga. So you can use him here. And then Broly, it's like, well, these characters did end up appearing in Dragon Ball Super Broly. So whatever. Anyway, so last month, he put up a really, really cool, it wasn't just a sketch as he kind of done. It's kind of like a little mini scene. It's effectively a story on a single page in and of itself, with Bardock's crew from the TV special speaking with Leek from Dragon Ball Super Broly, with Dodoria and some henchmen in the background, kind of like tying together these two stories. It looks like someone, whether it was Toyotaro or Shueisha, adjusted some of the dialogue from the original posting, which is what we have translated on the website, and then this new updated version. Just taking a quick look at this, what did they change in the dialogue? And it seems like it's only in Leek's dialogue?
Yes, it looks like they added a san after Bardock. So he's saying that Bardock-san and I are heading back to Planet Vegeta, but what about you guys? So that's an interesting change. I guess they wanted him to show more respect, perhaps putting his dialogue in line with the way that he talks in the movie.
I guess. Kind of like throws off the formatting.
Yeah, it creates a sort of gap there, and I don't know if I think it was perfectly fine the way it was before, to be honest. But
yeah. Toyotaro's done this, where after something's been posted, it's like, oh, I meant to say this, or oh, I thought of this afterward. I guess that's one good point about having social media now, is we get follow-ups on things. Another good example was his interview with Toriyama in Super Volume 4, I think it was, whatever the most recent was Viz put out, because we were doing that comparison, the Viz's translation versus what we have. And Toyotaro, was it, he said something like, oh, the version of Zamasu that I was talking about, I meant to say it was meant to be Merge Zamasu is the one who was strong there. Like, we get a follow-up on that on Twitter. So unfortunately, it's not part of the original product, but it's the one kind of side benefit.
It is. It's neat the way that he's paying attention. Maybe they'll change it for subsequent printings. Maybe not.
Yeah.
But that little tidbit is out there. And yeah, we won't get into the translation issues with the Viz version, but you can find those tweets on Twitter.
I think we'll end up adding those probably to the full page. Actually, I have guide pages for every collected volume of Dragon Ball Super. It's just a matter of porting that on over there.
Yeah, maybe they need a few more cooks in the kitchen. I don't know.
Maybe. All right, so Kevin says some random name-related questions. Is there any info on why Kaio's cricket was named Gregory? And where does the Z in Raditz come from? It's nowhere to be found in Raditsu. Would Raditz with an S be an equally valid romanization? Not that it's important. I'm just curious. So let's take Gregory first. Anything on Gregory?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
Even in the Kanzenban guidebooks, I don't think he specifically called out Gregory because, again, he's anime only. And I don't think we ever really got an answer about Gregory's naming. Even there's some very tiny notes from Toriyama that they include in some of the guidebooks about his additions for the Saiyan arc in animation.
Right, and Gregory's there. It does say, like, oh, Toriyama-sensei designed this character for us.
Yes, and it has Gregory, but it doesn't really mention anything about the naming. It's just that that's what his name is. Right. So, good question. It's not one we have an answer for.
Right. Every once in a while, we're allowed to not have an answer. All right. Why don't you break down Raditz then? Why would we do a Z at the end of Raditsu?
Because Raditsu, it's a double consonant at the end. So the T sound is doubled. So when that happens, it usually means that the word that it's based off of has a consonant at the end, like redto ribbon, red ribbon, for example. And the romanization of the English word radish should be radishu. And so to emphasize that, use a Z. As for why not an S, mostly because we don't want to make it look like it's plural. And I guess we break that rule for Beats with the Broly movie, for what it's worth. But anyway, it comes down to our personal preference.
I mean, that one's also just historical. As far as I know, everything has always spelled it that way.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'd have to go back and look at maybe some old merchandise. I don't know if there's anything out there. I feel like if anything, Japanese merchandise would have had just a literal full transliteration of all the syllables. You know what? We've been going for a bit, so let's call it there. I feel like that was a podcast, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we totally did that. All right. Well, head on over to the website, www.kanzenshuu.com. That is kanzenshuu.com. When you visit there, you will see news. You will see the complete podcast archives. You will see link to the forum. You will see, all sorts of good stuff there. Julian, pick a random thing. What is something that someone should go look at on Kanzenshuu?
The translations archives.
Okay. Pick something else.
Okay. The intended endings guide.
All right. These are the classics. All right.
Okay. Rumors.
Rumors. I mean, that's a classic too, but that's always good. That's my baby. So I like that one. They're all good. No matter what you click. How do I use Kanzenshuu? Click something. It's going to be good. So that's that. That's Julian. That's me. Hopefully we'll get Heath back around soon when things calm down. It seems like they're getting a snowstorm. I think we're getting some snow this week as well. Is that in the outlook for you too?
I think Tuesday-ish I heard.
Yeah, it's looking like that.
Finally melted, and now we're getting more.
Oh, well. Yep, righto. All right, so that's what we got going on. Stay tuned. There's really cool podcast stuff coming your way. Just as always, it's a matter of scheduling, and that all falls on me. So everything is always my fault. I gave you the site, gave you the info. Julian, wrap it up.
Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Kanzenshuu the podcast. Check us out next time.